Thanks, David. You've mentioned an online debate of yours that had some interesting results. Please tell us a little bit about that debate.
So the debate took place about 2.5 years ago on Facebook. There's a Pentecostal group in Puerto Rico, a Pentecostal church, and one of the guys there, who very bright guy, maybe I'll mention his name, Miguel. He did he's been a great admirer of William Lane Craig. And so he decided that he was going to go try all those arguments that William Lane Craig. And what he's done is he's bilingual, and so he's translated a lot of the stuff in Spanish. And then he would go online to try those arguments with Hispanic American Freethinkers and see how he would do. And and he would tell all his friends to watch, how I'm going to just let these guys have it. Well, because I have never watched William Lane Craig to a great deal, I would often go off script, and that threw him off. But he was expecting an answer, and I'm not giving him that answer, and I'm actually just going on a tangent, asking him something related, or sort of saying, well, this is your premise, and I don't agree with that premise. Prove your premise, and he wasn't prepared for that kind of stuff. So inadvertently, it seemed that it was, I guess, about a year later that I heard you mentioned, a year ago, I should say, that I heard you mention that, sometimes it's good if you go off script because it throws, things, they don't know what to do, and that's to your advantage. And it's a more sincere conversation because, again, sometimes these great thinkers have ways of doing something, and if you're just trying to talk it out with somebody else, it makes a lot of sense to just say, hey, I don't understand this, explain to me, what do you mean? And a lot of times they don't understand what they're saying as a premise, and trying to explain it, they get all in nuts trying to do it. So that was sort of the experience. He was trying the William Lane Craig on me. I didn't know much about William Lane Craig. I just get too frustrated watching him debate, and so that was the main thing. Now, one of the girls that was watching the debate, and she thought, well, why was he going on that? She didn't understand the argument herself, and she decided, well, I can just do better using my own logic and my own thinking on it. And that was sort of the start of the end of her religiosity.
So, are there different concerns when we're debating with members of the Hispanic and Latino communities?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. I think there are differences in both groups, in the Latinos versus what we would call mainstream America. In part is because of experiences. We have different experiences growing up, exposure to different kinds of things, and I believe that, and I've mentioned this before, where the fears are a little bit different. In other words, when someone wants to come out, a Latino wants to come out as an atheist, they're never afraid of what's going to happen to them, that they're going to be treated badly or whatever. It's usually, I don't want to hurt grandma, and I don't want to hurt, la abuela. I don't want to hurt any of, the people that I love. Because even if you're an atheist and they're religious, you still love them a lot. And the Latino families tend to be, pretty close, and they grow up with very strict, obey your parents and listen to your parents. So from that experience is one thing. The second part, I think it tends to be a little bit more emotional. They take religion and culture tend to be, I think, more engaged together in the Latino community, where baptisms and marriages and things like that are as much a religious experience as they are a cultural experience. And my parents are one that every opportunity for birthdays or special occasions, they bring the priest to their house. At the beginning, my siblings were a little nervous that there's something was going to happen there with me and the preacher, but I've realized it's their day and not mine, and so I behave, and I don't even let the preacher know, that the priest know that. So yeah, I think there's a difference in that sense, and then of course there's some differences in styles. Also less, I think in the Latino community it tends to be a little bit less academic and a little bit more relaxed. than the more formal. Oh, that word is, you misused that word in a, which you see in the more formal types of debates. So it's more relaxed, and also the way you would debate someone old in your family that you're supposed to have some respect versus the guy sitting next to you in an airplane or your buddy. It's a little bit different in the dynamics.
So are there significant differences due to specific linguistic traits, or is it primarily cultural?
I think it's primarily cultural difference. Often, what I meant by that is sometimes when you're doing a formal debate in mainstream, you get stuck on that's not the meaning of that word. You're using it wrong. I mean, William Lane Craig is very famous for taking a word and using it in one way in the beginning of the sentence and turning it around and using it in a different way, the same word in a different way. That's what I meant. As far as language barriers, usually, and if I'm talking to someone that is bilingual or even semi-bilingual, we'll switch sort of back and forth. We'll do the Spanglish kind of thing, and so I think we can move around the ideas, and you're able to communicate the ideas a little bit better in that sense. When I'm talking to my great aunt that only speaks Spanish, for instance, then it becomes much more difficult to translate things that I've only heard in English, for instance, and now trying to come up in Spanish, or vice versa. Sometimes I get people from Latin America whose language, is very good, and they will pick words that are either slang or regional or something, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, Google what does this word mean, and trying to see how they use that word. But in general, it's not so much the communication of the idea, but is the trickery that sometimes is used in debates with the words, and picking words here and there, that I don't think you see so much that in the Latino community.
Which arguments and tactics have you found to be most effective?
At least with the Latino community, a lot of the arguments that I hear tend to they become really silly when they try to show that their religion is the right one and everybody else is wrong. And whether they're Pentecostal or whatever, they're saying, well, they're not Christians. So you get they're not true Christians. We are the true Christians. And I don't care what they say about it. So, yes, we often have to, as in many times, you often have to let them explain exactly what is it that they mean by this or that. And so I've come to the conclusion that one of the most effective ways of debating Hispanics at this point, as of today, is forgetting the religion part. Forget it, let's not talk about religion, let's not talk about the details of this. Although once in a while it's just so much fun to tell, my great aunt recently, I was telling her, do you really, really, really believe that the host and the wine in the church are the true converted, body, the corpse of Christ and the blood? I said, if you put that host in your mouth and all of a sudden you find a fingernail in it, you're going to spit it out. And if it's actual blood, you're going to spit it out. So, so at that time that's fine. But usually, the debates recently that seem to be more successful are the ones where we say, let's not talk about religion for a bit. Let's talk about let's prepare to talk about religion let's talk about how do we know things. How do we get to know what's, this bottle of water is actually water and not alcohol or gasoline or vodka or something else? And so you start sort of very basic stuff. And then you start climbing to, how do we know what's imaginary versus what is supernatural, and how can we differentiate both things? So that, and you get them to start thinking, and a lot of the Socratic method. You ask the questions and let them and start painting them into a corner, and you can do that with a lot of things. Another thing that's worked out well is saying, "Hey, I'll bet you that you are better than Jesus when it comes to being good." And of course, you bring up, if you see someone walking around with 3 slaves and a child, and smacking them with a stick and selling them and stuff, would you do something about it? And they're like, yes, I would do something about it. That's horrible. And I said, well, what did Jesus say about the slavery? He made a couple of parables, and where it says, obey your masters, and That's pretty much it. He didn't say that it was bad. He didn't say anything else. So you are better than Jesus because Jesus had the power to do more than you can about something like that. And so it start opening the door to questioning things. And so that, so far, it seems to be a good opening, not attacking directly the religion, because religions have done thousands of years of preparation on how to protect themselves against all kinds of attacks and doubts and things like that.
We can't prove that God exists. You just have to take it on faith. And other times you'll have this lengthy discussion and you'll end up there where you've painted them into that corner, and now it's just, oh, you got to take it on faith. What do you do then? Are you stuck? Do you end the conversation?
Not at
or do you
all.
go back?
I love it when they go that way, because I said, well, is faith really a good way of knowing anything? I mean, how many wives have had, they have this feeling, this faith that their husbands are being truthful to them, and that their husbands are now with another woman, and they're wrong. Dead wrong. And let's say you walk into, you wake up this morning and you have a basketball-sized tumor in your stomach, and you go to your doctor, and the doctor says, I have a feeling that's nothing. Don't worry about it. Just have faith. Would you just have faith? Or, an airplane is now working fine, and the mechanic says, I have faith that plane is going to make it to the next city. Go ahead and jump on. And would you do it? And well, no. And I said, then why is it good for anything else? I mean, I tell them, I said, even, and some of them will say, well, there are scientists that have faith. Look at the head of NIH. He's a man of faith. And I say, yeah, but you know what? No scientist at all, not one single religious scientist takes their religion into the lab. They live it outside, and when they're in the lab, they're atheists. They never come out and say, ooh, this thing grew in a way I unexpected. It must be a miracle, and I'm going to publish that. No, they live their faith outside, and they become atheists when they're in the lab. Why do they do that? I said, so obviously faith is not really a good way of knowing anything. It doesn't explain anything, and it doesn't make any predictions. So we can't really use it for anything.
Is there a particular argument that you've heard from apologists that's not necessarily a good argument, but that you think comes across as a good argument from them because it's difficult for non-theists to address?
Usually, I think the tongue twisters that William Lane Craig puts out, kind of thing, and they get translated into Spanish sometimes, they become difficult only because of the kinds of thinking that it requires, and the logic twisters. It becomes very difficult to pick that one little thing where the logic is faulted. The arguments that are based on philosophy and logic sort of twisted together. And if you don't have a good philosophy background or an extensive or the inclination of playing the word games, that kind of stuff, it becomes just tedious from trying to sort of pick it apart. I'm lazy, and what I've done is when I start seeing something like that, I call in my buddy in Chile who was a board member of Humphrey, and he got a master's degree in philosophy, and I said, seek him, and he'll take them apart, and I try to learn from that experience. But it's something that takes training, so I find that frustrating because it's not genuine. Usually when someone comes with that kind of arguments, they learned it somewhere, someone told them this is the way to, and it's very effective in going against sort of your average person in the street that doesn't have a lot of education, and they don't know how to respond, and so they said, I don't know how to respond. I said, well, since you can't respond to it, that proves to you that's an argument for God. Now, what I've come to respond to something like that is said, well, an argument is not evidence. So you can give me all the arguments, but until you show me evidence. I said that applies not just to religion, that applies to everything. You can come up with a theory of anything, an argument for anything, an argument for unicorns. But as if you don't show me evidence that one exists, that doesn't make it appear and doesn't turn them into existence just because there's an argument for it.
Is it better to have an audience at all times, or is one-on-one discussion actually preferred?
Yes. Actually, everything is valuable. The big debates, I think, are I'll be the first that the big debates do not change minds. A lot of the cheerleaders that come in for one side or the other come in already with their mind, and I've never heard of anyone changing their mind walking out the door after the debate. But they make for great entertainment. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. It's sparring. It's no different than playing chess, or playing another skill game of knowledge and strategy. So they're fun. They also, but they I think they bring to the forefront the ideas and the arguments that, hey, this is important. This is something that as a society has an effect, and there are some debaters that are better than others. But I think also they also help the one-on-one debates that people have with your brother, with your cousin, with your friend, and where you're not trying to convince them, you're kind of having more of a conversation. That person already likes you already like them, and they know you're not trying to screw them over, and that you're sincere in what you're saying and your things. And so the big debates help frame some of those smaller debates with arguments and things of the sort. I have evidence that those private debates work. That those private debates, after a year or two of having these debates with your friends, they become, let's say they don't become necessarily an atheist or an agnostic, but often a win is that they become far less. They become deist. They become they realize religion is just a shell game that con people play to get money. It's just a business like anything else. And once you have those small debates, it's like when you buy a blue car, all of a sudden you notice all the blue cars in the street. It's kind of the same thing. Once you point out a few things to your other person, they start seeing all those things in their communities and in the people that they're dealing with, and start saying, he was right about that. Look at this, And that in itself is what helps them become more and more secular. And that's why I think it takes some time. It takes a year, it takes 2 years. Some will never say I'm atheist or agnostic. A lot of them will just say, yeah, I believe in God, but I'm not going to go to church. And hey, look, it was good enough for Thomas Jefferson, good enough for Franklin and Washington. They never attended church, and yet they were deists, and that was good. That's fine. So that's I think that's a good world. If people were like that, because they're not going to be imposing those views, and they're not going to be voting for people that impose those views in our government, which is our ultimate fear, is that separation of church and state that we see getting blurred every day.
Should we be having debates in the Hispanic community now, or is there some other work required first?
I think we're just about ready now to start getting into the debates. In fact, what I'm hearing from a lot of the folks, a lot of Latinos, is like, look, we need to start dipping our toe into that area because it can only help us. So if we're able to convince a church preacher or someone like that to have a debate, then we are the ones that are going to win. And that whether, however we do in the debate is going to bring a lot of people that never knew that they were atheists out there, that never knew that Latinos were out there that didn't believe, and that they were good people after all, that these are okay and so forth. So it gives us a forum that we currently don't have. The problem, and we've started to try in doing those debates, the problem is a lot of the preachers and a lot of the priests don't want that. They want to say, no, that's just a couple of people that are hellbound. Don't pay attention to them, ignore them. A lot of churches instruct their members not to speak to anyone that is a non-believer because the devil is in them. And so stay away from the devil. And so we'll see. We're going to try a strategy soon. There are a lot of... So to be a Pentecostal preacher, you basically have to have a pulse. And so really anyone can be. And fairly often after they do it for a while, a lot of them start believing their own bullshit. So we're going to try to take advantage of some of that. In Manassas, Virginia, there's a row. It used to be an industrial park, where you have those metal doors that where they used to paint cars and fix windshields and things. Well, when the economy took a dive in 2008 in that area, they rented it to Pentecostal churches. So each one of those is a separate Pentecostal church, and they're all they're all bidding, trying to pull members from each other. And there are 15 of these churches, one after the other, after the other. So we decided to pay a visit to that area one particular Sunday, and we brought a camera and we started walking around, and we figured we'll get our ass kicked, but that would make for some good film. And we got in, and they looked at us a little funny. They were speaking in tongues, and after a few minutes, the preacher came, put everybody to sing, and came over and said, "Yeah, welcome to the church. What's going on?" And at that moment, it just kind of occurred to me and says, "Well, there are many preachers and many churches in this area, but a couple of people said that you were the best one here. And so we came to see you, and maybe we can interview you." And man, it was like a peacock. "Oh, yes, I am. I am the best preacher in here. Oh, that's great. Yeah, sure, I'll talk to you." And so, pride. We can go for their pride. So I'm hoping that we'll find among those 15 in there, one or two that are so full of themselves that they actually believe they're the greatest thing. And, they always had a friendly audience where they have people telling them that they're great. And maybe we can do a debate with some of those.
Should we focus on specific doctrinal claims or the top-level questions like does a God exist, or both?
I think we need three, all three. And the third part is, so the first one is, chipping at the religion. I think that's always fun to do, especially if you're aware of all those things. So if you're educated on that aspect, then the next time somebody says something, you can kind of take a little a little snap at it. And at family reunions or whatever, you can roll your eyes, and when they say, "Why are you rolling your eyes?" you can say, "Well, that's silly." I've used, for instance, the treatment that the Catholic Church gives to women. And so anytime that one of my nieces or one of my relatives says, that they're pro-women and this, and I said, "Well, how can you say that and be so involved in the Catholic Church when they treat women like third-class citizens, when they have no power, they can't even become a priest?" I mean, a priest that just came out of school has more power than Mother Teresa. So, because women are so, and so it's good to know those things and be able to attack them once in a while. Again, a lot of the problem with that is, you convince them, you spend a lot of effort and time convincing them that the Catholic Church is the wrong one, and before you know it, they convert to Pentecostals. Now you got to start the whole thing again. So that's kind of, now from the argument, from the side of the argument, the high level, is there a God? I think there's more philosophy. You have to take, actually, I think a step before that, and is discuss what I said before, is how do we know things? And how can we know things? And what is the difference between an imaginary thing and a supernatural thing? And how can we test it to see, So I tell them, tell me, how do you know a unicorn doesn't exist? And then tell me how an angel exists. And how are those two things not the same thing? We have as much evidence for one as we have for the other. In fact, I think we have more evidence for a unicorn, being possible, more possible. Having an animal, a mammal with a horn in the middle, we already have animals like that. And so that's not really going against, but a human with wings and, really 6 appendages, because, wings count as appendages, that's really weird. That's more of an insect kind of thing. So, or, fairies. People believed in fairies in the 1800s. They really believed them. And, a lot of famous people, spend a lot of money and effort trying to prove that they existed. So I think the better approach is to, before you deal with the arguments for God and does God exist or doesn't exist, and then sort of how does that trickle down to your own particular religion, is to discuss, well, how do we know things? How can we know things? How, and attack faith.
Is there a method of attacking faith that you prefer?
If you can convince someone that faith is really not a good way of knowing anything, and it's really not a good way of approaching anything, that then that kind of disarms all the religions altogether in one shot. And in talking about faith, you can also, of course, discuss, well, why don't you believe in Vishnu or some of the other gods? And let's talk about those gods. Let's leave your God alone for a while and have them make sort of your argument as to why that God is false. And they have documentation, they have things, they have apparitions, they have miracles, they have all the same things. but why won't you believe in that one? And once they give you all those arguments, say, now let's replace Vishnu with Jehovah. And how is that different?
And lastly, do you take it easy on family members when having these conversations?
No, I use a different approach. So with my young family, so the younger, by young I mean anyone young is anyone younger than me. So anyone under 50 in this case. Then I pull no punches. I use a combination of asking questions and here are some facts and this is why you're wrong, and more aggressive in that sense. If it's with an older person, such as a debate that I've been having for the last year with my aunt, she's 87, but loves email and discovered how to do links. She links a lot of stuff. She will send me something, and I will respond to it, and usually in the forms of questions. Well, have you considered this? And maybe is that, and offer explanations for miracles, for all kinds of things. And how funny that every time this girl gets possessed, no scientist is around to be able to sort of verify that it is a possession. How do we know it's really a possession, and not a mental disease? I mean, and so I ask a lot of questions, and I give. Since I know her better in how much education she had and everything. Then I cheat a little bit. I give her, for instance, some of the Greek arguments for if God is good, why not help? The evil argument kind of stuff, and the way she typically would respond when she can't respond, and she says, well, I'm just a humble old woman. I can't, and she'll use her own tactic, and then she'll say, but this guy over there in the video, he knows a lot. Have you written to him and asked him those questions? And I said, I'm not having a conversation with him. I'm having a conversation with you. What do you think? And why haven't you ever asked yourself those questions? So a few of my relatives will come and tell me, hey, take it easy on her because she's 87 and this. I didn't go seeking her. She wants a little bit of a rumble. Let's do a little bit of a rumble, but. So I don't take it easy too much in the sense, but I am always very careful, of course, to always at the end say, I love you, hugs and kisses, I can't wait to see you again, and so forth. And then when I go visit Rhode Island, where I grew up, I do go and see her and hug her and, ensure that our discussions in religion have nothing to do with my feelings to you and vice versa. And that usually... that usually lowers tensions but I'm glad to say that at least one of my relatives, a young one, very, at 16, she was told not to say that the whole family was coming to Washington, D.C., where I live. And she kind of let it out. And she says, oh, we'll be in Washington, D.C. next week. And I said, really? I hadn't heard you were coming. So you're coming to visit me? She says, no, I don't think we'll have time. We're taking a bus with the church and we're going to protest abortion. And I said, oh, well, I guess I'll see you there. I'll be in the other side of the pro-choice side. And she's like, oh, I can't believe it. And she's getting all frustrated. She couldn't. She says, well, I'm just going to throw a fetus at you. I said, wouldn't you have to abort it first in order to throw it? And my mom stepped in and my mom's like, you're abusing this girl. She's just a little girl. I say, Mom, she's 16 and she's looking for an argument. She needs to face the real world. So I thought it was funny. Well, this went on for a few years. She went to college, went on for a few years. And then one day, when we're having this argument, she says, well, don't argue that. I'm not a Catholic. So I threw something about the Catholic Church and about, well, you do this in the church and this and that. And she was part of the youth group, And she says, well, I'm not. I said, you're not a Catholic? When did this happen? And she says, well, I'm a Buddhist now. And so now she's a Buddhist. So I guess being a Buddhist is better than... I still have my, my complaints about Buddhism and certain parts of Buddhism, the treatment of children and believe in reincarnation and some of the other stuff. But I figure it's certainly a lot lighter and, a lot better in that sense.